Good evening. So I had a request this afternoon from Carson asking if I could read a book that was a little bit more geared towards Key Stage 2. And absolutely. So I'm going to start reading for you one of my absolute favourites. Now, it's probably a little bit young for year 6, but it's quite an entertaining book and I think you'll enjoy it. So I'm going to read The Boy Who Grew Dragons. Okay, and it's by Andy Shepherd. Chapter 1, Battle of the Bongle. It started about a year ago and it was all Grandad's fault. Well, his and the jam tarts. I was just licking the last off my fingers when he said, "We should grow our own chipstick." "Jam tarts?" I asked. "Raspberries," he grinned. "Then we could make our own jam for Nana's tarts. We could mix them up too. Strawberry and blackberry, gooseberry and raspberry. Just think of all the possibilities. Delicious." It did make a pretty good picture in my head. A vast plate-sized jam tart with different coloured sections like a multi-topping pizza. "And more too," Grandad went on. Before I could dive further into the jammy dream, radishes, beans, onions, cauliflowers, you name it, we could grow it. Suddenly, I wasn't so sure if it was a great idea. Strawberry and cauliflower jam? Ew. Anyway, I had enough fruit and vegetables to deal with. What with Mum shoveling in my 5 a day. I mean, she even sneaked dried fruit into perfectly good flapjacks, as if I wouldn't notice. But Grandad wasn't one to let go of an idea once it had fluttered down and settled. So, on Saturday morning, there we were, at the end of his garden, up to our ears in mud, digging away at what looked to be like a monster jungle. In fact, I was beginning to realise why Mum had offered me provisions for my trip to the Amazon. Without the nettles and brambles, my grandparents' garden was probably half as big again and ran all the way down to the fields and beyond. "I've been waiting to get stuck into this space since we moved in," Grandad told me, pausing to catch his breath. "But what with one thing and another, I just don't seem to have found the time." I stopped digging and scraped my spade across a clot of mud. I know you have no idea what he was talking about, but I did. I knew exactly what he meant by one thing and another. "Sorry," I muttered, because I really was. He rested his arms on the spade and leaned towards me. "Now, there's something you should know about my Grandad." He twinkles. That might sound weird, but he does. There's a phrase, to have a twinkle in your eye. That means to be bright or sparkling with delight. Well, my Grandad has the biggest twinkle of anyone I've ever known. All right then, he was shining that twinkle down on me till I felt its warmth flooding every bit of my body. It was like I'd sat down in front of the toastiest marshmallow toasting fire. "Now then, Chipstick, how many times have I told you? What's the deal with families?" I smiled. "They stick together?" "Exactly," he grinned. "Not unlike jam tarts now. Get digging." So I did. The worst thing to dig up was this stuff Grandad called bongleweed. It wound itself round everything, clinging to roots, shoots and shrubs for dear life. Soon enough, I was in an almighty tug of war, boy against plant. And for a moment there, it really looked as if the evil bongle plant, overlord, might win. But I dug and scraped and pulled and heaved, until all that was left was a patch of earth, and the strangest looking plant I'd ever seen. It was taller than me and my blistered hands would have only made it halfway around the trunk, except it was hard to see the trunk because of all these long green cactus arms that draped down. "It looks like a giant upturned mop head," declared Grandad. "But you know, green and spiky and knobbly too." Bizarrely, he wasn't far wrong. Sprouting from some of the cactus-like arms were vivid yellow and orange tendrils, like bursts of flames. And on each one of those nestled a fruit. Some were large and red and looked fit to burst. Others were small and green and looked new. But all of them had weird, spiky, pineapple-like leaves. They were so unlike anything I'd ever seen in our fruit bowl at home, and I found myself reaching to touch one. I noticed one of the smaller fruits had already turned red, but the tendril it was attached to was being pushed down by the weight of a few of the larger fruits hanging above. I gently lifted it and moved it to one side to give it some space, and as I did, I saw something even weirder. "Hey, Grandad," I called. It's glowing like those fireflies. Do you remember?" Dad said it was a nonsense or something. He said some jellyfish do it too. "Bioluminescence," Grandad corrected. He peered at the red fruit and rubbed a finger across it. "I reckon it's just mould," he said. "Come on, Chipstick, I'm famished." "But what is it?" I asked. Grandad wrinkled his nose. "No idea, but we can pull it out tomorrow." I looked at the red spiky fruit that was glowing in my hand, and whether I pulled it a little too hard or it just chose that moment to fully ripen one way or another, the fruit dropped from the vivid tendril. Looking at it in my palm, somehow I didn't feel like throwing it into the bonfire pile, so I tucked it under my arm before following Grandad inside. Later when I got home, I put some pineapple-y sprouting fruit on my desk and typed "strange spiky fruit" into the search box of my computer. Pictures popped up, and there it was, right next to durian, which smelled like poo apparently, so it was dead lucky we didn't find one of those. No, here it was, size of a mango, red, spiky pineapple-like leaves, definitely what was sitting in front of me. I clicked on the picture and read the caption, "Piata, dragon fruit." Yep. Now, it's easy for you because you know there's about to be a dragon. But I was clueless back then. I mean, if someone gives you a fairy cake, you don't expect Tinkerbell to pop out, do you? So I didn't jump up and down screaming, "Whoopee, I'm getting a dragon." I just left it on my desk and went downstairs for tea. And that probably wasn't the best idea, you know, because of what happened next. Wow. That's chapter 1, The Boy Who Grew Dragons. I hope you enjoyed it. And talking about tea, Ralph and I are going to get our tea now. So we will see you back on Monday. Have a lovely rest of your week. Keep doing your fantastic learning, and I will catch up with you then. Bye-bye.